So the people of South Korea will elect their new leader in 6 days, which made last night's TV debate even more critical for the main presidential runners. Will the course of the next 6 days be a game changer? Let's turn to Professor Mason Richey. Good to have you with us, Professor Richey.
Hi, good morning.
So I'd like to start with the third and final debate last night. Do you think any of the four runners excelled in trying to convince voters that they are the most suitable leader?
Well, the first thing to say is that last night's debate, continued the slide in quality that we saw from the first debate to the second debate, and now from the second debate to the third debate, where the quality of discussion has just gotten worse and worse. The policy-oriented discussions were totally overwhelmed by personal attacks. None of the four candidates really seemed like they were statesmen, so to speak. I would perhaps make the argument that the only one who at least occasionally seemed like an adult in the room was Kwan Young-kook, but of course he's trailing far behind and I see no chance of winning. The two conservatives, Lee Jun-seok and Kim Moon-soo, attacked Lee Jae-myung for being a monster dictator, which really seems like the wrong terrain to be attacking him, considering that the conservatives just had a monster dictator in Yoon Suk-yeol, who called martial law as a part of an insurrection attempt. So that seems like the wrong terrain to attack Lee Jae-myung. Perhaps some of the continued attention that they drew to his corruption scandals might have hurt Lee Jae-myung a little bit among people in the center and moderates, but I think for most voters that's already factored in. Lee Jun-seok attacked Lee Jae-myung for some sort of strange sexual harassment comments that he's allegedly made in the past, which again, given the person who's saying that is Lee Jun-seok, who has his own history in this regard, really seems like the wrong terrain to be attacking Lee Jae-myung. If I were the conservatives, I would have been focusing on a forward-looking agenda, which has simply not happened. Lee Jae-myung, for his part, tends to focus on, trying to attach the conservatives to the martial law insurrection by Yoon Suk-yeol, and I think that's probably a smart move on his part. But of course, again, that's already baked in. The conservatives have largely, more or less accepted, that that's happened and have tried to move on. So I don't really think that that's necessarily going to change the needle in this very much. Overall, the whole debate really reminded me of this expression we have in English. We say, when you wrestle in the mud, everyone gets dirty, but only the pigs like it. And it really seemed like they were all pigs in this debate. It was really kind of disgusting, honestly.
Right, the final debate turning out to be not too pretty yet again. Now, voting in South Korea's snap presidential election officially begins here in the country tomorrow with 2 days of early voting. Professor Richey, can that be a barometer of the actual election day and the election day voter turnout? What do you think?
I think that there's a pretty coherent thought that people who come out and vote early are, at least in some sense, an indicator or a barometer of an overall electoral engagement, and that people are perhaps not excited, but they are emotionally driven to come out and vote, which of course takes time, it takes energy, takes some effort. You have to think about who you're going to vote for in advance and all of these sorts of things. So I think that that can well be the case. We'll see what the final numbers are for total voter participation afterwards. But in general, one would think that level of engagement overall can be indicated by early voting. There are, of course, also perhaps some downstream effects where early voting and significant voter engagement may end up spurring people who might not have otherwise voted to sort of, let's say, quote unquote, catch the voting fever and themselves come out and vote during the actual election day. So there might be a sort of snowball effect. I think there's not very much evidence in political science research for that, but I think that there's some at least. And then the last thing I would say is, there are some other issues that come along with early voting, such as ballot storage and election integrity. And in a place like South Korea, which is heavily polarized right now, and which there's a significant debate around electoral election integrity. Obviously, that presents some challenges too, so that all sides can maximize the feeling that they feel like the election has been treated fairly and without partisanship.
Right, election being fair in any shape or form. And now we do know overseas voter turnout marked a record high at 79.5%. This is certainly an exciting figure, isn't it?
Yeah, it's certainly a significant number. Record turnout in that regard, and I think that there's an argument, at least that you're hearing in some places, that overseas Koreans feel some sort of extra responsibility to come out and vote, extra civic duty, especially given what's happened over the last 6 months with the martial law declaration. And maybe there's some truth that I think it's really hard to tell. But I do think it likely indicates, at the very least, how overseas Koreans see that this is a very high stakes election, not only domestically in Korea in terms of the direction that the country is going to take here, but also, we're in a very precarious and perilous moment internationally. And of course, overseas Koreans feel that perhaps as acutely as anyone. And so they probably feel like there's some sense in which they're trying to come out and vote so that they can strengthen Korea as a player on the global stage in a moment of extreme danger and instability.
Certainly. Professor Richey, before I let you go, we are now officially in this so-called poll blackout mode until the election, where we no longer know the support rates for any runners. Now, do you think this period will be a game changer in any way?
My guess is probably not. If we were in a situation where the polls were relatively close, that might make a difference in terms of the way that people perceive the election taking place. And of course, similarly, if there were to be a last-minute merger between Lee Jun-suk and Kim Moon-soo, that might also change the needle a little bit if we were in an election that's relatively close. But the fact of the matter is, right now, Lee Jae-myung is leading head-to-head races anywhere between something like 9 and 13 points, which is obviously far outside of the margin of error. And so I think it would require some very significant new revelations of various varieties to really push things one way or the other in terms of moving the needle. And I just don't think that the access that people don't have to polling data is going to be something that's going to factor very much into the overall outcome of this race.
All right. It was a pleasure to have you with us again, Professor Richi. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Great. Thanks for having me.